Welcome to the Conquer Podcast, an engaging audio experience focusing on life, wealth, and happiness in a new age. Our hosts include top producing business owner and mortgage professional Cary Riano and well-recognized LPL financial advisor and business owner David Hellinger out of Cary, North Carolina. Tune in bi-monthly for a new hit episode and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
I'm Cary Riano with the Cary Riano Lending Team, and I'm here with my friend, David Hellinger.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
So I'm David Hellinger, and I run a wealth management practice right down the street from you here in great downtown Cary, North Carolina, and doing so for 18 years. We help families and individuals and business owners prioritize what's important to them and help and guide them along the way in all things financial. The whole point of this is maybe to add a little value, not just to the community, but and to share a little bit about what's going on here in Cary, but for business owners and individuals trying to do better for themselves in all sorts of ways. So we asked Scott to join us, who is one of the top realtors in the area and has been doing this for a very, very long time. We'll ask you to share a little bit about your background in a minute, but Scott, you and I have known each other for a long time now, so I think it's going on about a decade, right? Has it been longer than that? Yeah, it's been a long time.
Almost 15 years.
Oh my gosh! All right, so 15 years ago we met, and you had already had a lifetime of experience in the real estate world, and I've watched you over these years do it the right way. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what the right way is when it comes to real estate transactions and particularly in this market.
I appreciate the opportunity. So it's been just over 30 years that I arrived in the Triangle area. I was relocated here by a mortgage banking firm that I was working for. They had a failing branch in North Raleigh, and they needed someone to turn it around. And I had a dear friend of mine who was a pediatric pulmonologist working on his pediatric pulmonology fellowship at Duke. My best friend since we were 13. In fact, you had the good fortune of meeting Dr. Adele. Dean said, when he got here, he said, Scott, if you're ever going to make a move, this is where you got to move to. And shared with me a little bit about it. And I know a little bit about North Carolina, but just not a whole lot. As good fortunes happen, I was on a company-sponsored cruise. I got back from the cruise. There was a voicemail on my answering machine, and it said, Scott, we have an opportunity for you. I was talking about leaving the firm. I was being recruited by another company, and they said that our manager in Raleigh is stepping down, moving into a new arena, and if you'd like, we'd be interested in relocating you and your family. So that's what got me here. About a year later, I found out that the company was being sold. I was one of the top, going from the bottom branch, became one of the top producing branches in the country. We did about $250 million in 1998 in volume, and the branch had never done more than $23 million for the first 10 years in the market.
That's phenomenal.
So we had a good run. So in 95, I decided to get my real estate license. And I believe strongly in understanding who my consumers were. And really my targeted market was real estate brokers. I built relationships with real estate brokers, knowing that it would give me an opportunity to serve the community as a lender. And in 1995, shortly after I became licensed, I partnered with an appraiser friend, and we became land developers. I did my first development in Franklin County, a little 13-lot subdivision, had an interesting setback. Fran hit a week after, Hurricane Fran that is, hit a week after we closed, and literally wiped out the 13-acre lot. And as I was licking my wounds, trying to figure out how we were possibly going to make money on this transaction, soon learned that nobody wanted to live in a home next to trees. after that storm.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So it turned out it actually raised the value of our property, and we ended up doing very well. So I stayed in the development arena until 2008 when the market collapsed. And I experienced the worst of the worst, right? Lost 7 digits of savings, retirement. Didn't know then what I know now from my good friend David. There's certain things that you should do and certain things you shouldn't do when you're faced with serious setbacks. But we got through it. And in 2009, I owned a small mortgage company at the time. I wasn't running it, but I owned it. And my loan officers were telling me, Scott, you won't believe Joe and Jill and Peggy, they're all getting out of the real estate business. And I said, really? And it hit me. The reasons they were getting out was because of the plethora of short sales and foreclosures that were coming to the market. They didn't understand how to navigate the situation with their mortgage companies. And I was getting phone calls asking for my advice. And at that point, I realized this was the time for me to jump in headfirst and start serving the local community in meaningful ways. And I jumped in and I became a full-time real estate broker at that point, and I never looked back. And I've since then, and as I continue to move forward in my career, I look for ways to help people avoid making the same bad decisions that I did, which were both greed and fear-based. I could share lots of stories about my place at Hilton Head, my place at Lake Gaston, and how hard it was to let go of those properties when the market started coming down. But since then, I've developed a process that's designed to teach people how to make very smart decisions when it comes to buying and selling and retaining real estate as an investment. So I take a lot of pride in getting clear on what people are trying to accomplish. I work very closely with their financial advisors and their mortgage planners because that's a key element to their success, right? The one thing I think a lot of real estate brokers miss out on in the analysis. There's a lot of good brokers, don't get me wrong, a lot of great realtors in our market. And I'm thankful for the relationships that I've developed with those realtors in our community. But real estate really does mean different things to different people. For some people, it's merely a roof over the head. For others, it's a means to building a greater asset base.
Long-term wealth.
Yes. And for others, it's all they focus on, right? They are about building their real estate asset base, whether it's commercial or residential, and in a multitude of ways on the commercial side. So that's a little bit about me. I'm sure I went a lot longer than I should have.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I want you to focus a little bit on that first process as you were going through that short selling. First of all, there's probably a lot of listeners that don't really remember because it was a real small segment of a population. It was enough that needed servicing, but it was a small segment because we didn't get hit as hard as a Phoenix or Las Vegas or Florida. But there was a short sale crisis, if you will. There was an issue. So explain a little bit about what that meant, just to give us a couple sentences of what that is, and then how did you come in, and more importantly, how did you help people navigate through the letting go, the moving on, the wise decision in the face of not the best of circumstances.
Sure. So it was brutal. It was brutal, right? So homes, the values of homes were less than the mortgages that folks owned on them, and these were people that, in many cases, were people that were being forced to relocate for jobs because of the changing demographics, and some of them had excellent credit. They weren't in default on their mortgages. They were stuck upside down in their homes. And it took a lot of discipline for some of them to say, I don't want to let this go. So I reminded them that what goes down must go up, right? And some of those have just recently sold their homes, right? After some 12 years. And some of them have just, well, great example of one. He bought, I didn't facilitate the purchase, but he purchased his home just prior to the market crash in 2008. And up until recently, he never dreamed that he'd actually sell his home for anything close to what he had paid for it. And we just recently put it on the market for $30,000 more than what he had paid for it, and sold it for $90,000 over the list price.
Nice.
So thank goodness he held on to it. He saw through it. But so in that particular case, it was really helping individuals understand that the asset class will come back. It's worth hanging on to. Hang in there. And then you had other individuals that were pouring everything that they owned out of their 401ks, out of their retirement accounts, even including their life insurance contracts, just to make good on their loans, not realizing that all they were really doing was helping the bank. And so those individuals, with very good local attorneys, both bankruptcy attorneys and estate planning attorneys and financial advisors, coached them through the process of allowing the homes to go in a short sale, and then negotiating with the lenders on how that short sale was managed. How do you deal with it? $100,000 or $200,000 of less equity at the time of closing. And we're very fortunate that most of those individuals were able to have those liens completely released with no additional obligation. It did hurt their credit for an extended time period, but it didn't wipe out their savings. And after 5 to 7 years, depending upon the individuals, they were back in a position to acquire property and move back into the realm of homeownership.
So let me jump in really quick because I just had a thought here.
Yeah.
So how, if you're someone out there now that's been in forbearance, they hear the conversation, what is different today than was back then? What is the...
Got it. So the most significant difference now is that while they were in forbearance, the values of their homes have been increasing. So, and the lenders have been instructed in many cases, the Fannie Mae and FHA, the government-sponsored enterprises, they've been instructed to review the individual's case, and if they are currently in a situation where they can afford to make the mortgage payment, then they will do a workout and push as much of that balance to the back of the loan as they possibly can. In some cases, they're going to renegotiate terms. In others, they'll keep the terms the same and then just put the payoff towards the back.
But if you felt like you couldn't or you cannot, you're not in a position, do you feel like that all the equity now, that you wouldn't want to walk away from it? Like in 2008, I was upside down, so maybe I had to walk away from it.
Yes.
But in this scenario, that's not the case.
You could have purchased a property 6 months ago, at the peak of the market 6 months ago, and you built enough equity in the last 6 months to pay your fees and still make a profit.
Call me. I can help you out with the mortgage end of it for sure, give you some advice. I'm working with some clients right now that I'm helping with them, getting them in a better position. But if you ultimately feel like you must act, you don't want to walk away from that equity and leave it for the bank. You definitely want to call a realtor that can help you with that.
100%.
It's fascinating to have this conversation because we've turned from one extreme end of the market to another extreme end. They're both on extremes, right? And this is
in just a decade.
Right. And these are conversations that, you and I personally, when we go and have a dinner and talk about, it's the navigation of these, of behavior, of your own behavior, of what you should do, whether you're in extreme or in the middle or you're in cold, hot, or medium, right? And so, my clients today are asking, probably the most common real estate question my clients are asking is they don't look at the markets like we look. We understand rates of return and how quickly the market is rising. We don't just look at real estate. We're looking at land prices. We're looking at other commodities, markets. There's a lot of valuation in what we do, but I think that the average person may or may not pay attention. Someone puts a house for sale next door, they're curious. probably perhaps go on Zillow from time to time.
Mhm.
But I think my clients are oftentimes asking me, is there something that I should be doing? Is there a transaction that I could make? Right? You know, I got a call from a client just the other day, and their daughter had bought a property in town. I think they paid $250,000, and recently the neighborhood is selling in the low fours. Same house, right? It's exciting.
Mhm. If you plan on selling this.
Yes, correct.
What to buy,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure these are conversations. Not only are you being asked, but you're actually having to negotiate. Tell us a little bit about that market. You know, if someone wants to move in town, if someone wants to move across the street, if someone moves up market, down market, from a 2-story to a ranch, you know, what's the wisest move? You know, what's the dumbest thing to what's to wait for?
That's a great question. So one of the greatest challenges for people that are not in our market at this point in time is that unless they've had some other asset class, right, that's put them in a position where they can afford to buy what it is they want. So let's just say, for example, you've guided someone and they've acquired a significant amount of stock.
Mm-hmm.
And you've looked at that, you've said, you know, at this point in your circumstance, in your life's circumstances, it might make sense to rebalance your portfolio. They may feel like they're getting into the real estate asset class at a very high price. But with the recent Apple effect, and those of you listening that aren't familiar, Apple recently made an announcement that they're going to be adding 3,000 jobs over the course of the next 5 years. So the market is anticipating that impact on real estate prices. So people are today paying prices that they're anticipating the values to be in another 6 to 12 months.
Right.
That's what you're competing against. So if you want to get into this market, you have to have the right headset on. And that is that I'm going to pay a premium to the list price in some cases, in many cases. And most importantly, I have to outbid my competition. And my competition is not the seller anymore. The competition is other people that want that same exact home or that same exact commercial building, whether it's a multifamily property, a light industrial building, storage facility, or whatnot. So just, you know, this morning I had the good fortune of talking with a client. He's finally settled into his home, and now he's thinking about his next investment. He wants it to be an automobile repair shop that he's renting out to an automobile company. I reminded him that a lot of people want to do the exact same thing. So when the opportunities come up, you have to be prepared to negotiate.
How long are you advising as far as staying power? You know, if you're going to make a real estate investment, whether it's residential or commercial, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So
what do you think that you're saying as far as timeline?
So it will depend, right? So if you have any interest in getting into development, this is not a very smart time to get in because first of all, it's still fiercely competitive. The developers are competing against one another, but in a lot of cases are actually forming alliances. So imagine this. You're a builder developer and you're running out of lots. You have enough lots to get you through 2021, but you have no inventory for 2022. So another developer happens to have land under contract and he's short properties this year, but he's got a plethora of lands coming to the market in 2022 and 2023. They're doing trade equity deals. I'll give you 10 lots this year for 20 lots next year. You can't do that as a layman, right? If you don't know the players in the marketplace, you're not going to be able to do that kind of business. So if somebody had an interest in developing in this area, I'd say, you know, either have very, very deep pockets, and I'm talking about, you know, the $20 to $50 million investors, you know, they can compete in certain arenas. But below that, it's not worth getting into the game. But same with multifamily. Between REITs and insurance companies buying that market up, you're fighting a losing battle.
Sure.
Yeah. But if you're talking about what kind of staying power do you have to acquire single-family residences or a coffee shop that's leased out, you know, good rule of thumb, you should expect, depending upon the type of industry, to have to deal with a 20 to 25% vacancy factor. We don't have it now, but if we end up into a tough market, you're going to want to be able to afford that. If you can't handle a 25% vacancy, in most cases, you're in the wrong asset class.
Sure. Well, and there's I think about the early part of this conversation about being in a short sell market again. It wouldn't take very much for some of the people that are buying 90,000 above asking price to find themselves in a short market. I'm not saying that it would happen, but it's that you don't need a big rate of change.
Well, so
for that to be the case.
To get back to Sherry's original question, what's different today versus what it was like back then? So the most significant difference was that the loans that were being made to people that forced the prices up were bad loans, right? Sherry worked and continues to work for a company that does business ethically and morally. They give great rates and provide great service. There were companies out there during that time period that gave above market rates to people that should have never owned a home. They were barely getting by renting. You put them into the added responsibility of having to fix the house when there's a problem or lose a job for a couple months, they're at the end of their mortgage, right? They're at the end of their home ownership, right? So what you see now is if people start losing their jobs and they have to move, there's 10 to 15 behind them that want to be here and are looking forward to them moving. And those people are going to be moving, selling at a profit, right? But having to figure out where they're going to go.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's probably important then to share what the inventory rates are now compared to averages nationally, locally.
Yeah. So
how much inventory is out there?
So let's put it in perspective. 2 years ago, same time, we had about 8,500 homes on the market.
Okay, with a population of?
Well, we're 118,000, in our market.
Okay.
We have less than 1,500 homes. If no
and
other
homes.
Yeah, if no, this is in MLS. This is not Cary.
Yeah.
This is in the entire MLS. So imagine this is 1,500, less than 1,500 in the entire MLS. So if we didn't add a single home to the inventory, we would be out of homes in the next 3 weeks. There wouldn't be another home available for sale in 3 weeks. That's where we are right now.
And what's the growth rate of the area? I've been saying 56 people a day, but I think I said that about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's
so I listened to one of the school board give a speech the other day, and she said it's over 70 now. And I think they have a pretty good finger on the pulse of what's going on. But I think that number may actually be low. We spend a lot of time talking about how important the lifestyle change is now, and because they're going to have to pay a price for the change. I feel bad for them. They should be in a better position to make that change and feel like they've actually downsized and started to save some money. But I have individuals like in 5,600 square foot homes, right, that are obsolete in the neighborhoods that they're in, okay? And they're looking to size down to a 2,500 square foot ranch and seeing that the price is like almost the same.
But does that create an opportunity?
Construction, yeah.
Do you think that creates an opportunity someone moving the other direction?
Yes.
Starting to have a family, starting to grow, thinking something bigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're in a starter home in the community, would you recommend perhaps looking up more?
The best opportunities are the homes, built from the mid 80s through the late 90s that are in the nicer communities that haven't been remodeled. And people will still pay, they'll pay a price for them, but they won't have to pay a premium for them. But those same people are going to have to be the ones to invest a significant amount to improve it. A 5,000 square foot house is going to cost you at least $200,000 to do a complete remodel.
Yep.
Challenge everywhere you look.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It
How
really
often
is.
you have to tell people not yet or
Oh, every day.
rent?
Every day, every single day. Yeah, that's most of the people that I communicate with. That's essentially what their advice is. I say that my theme song now is should I stay or should I go, right?
Right.
I let people know that's a common question that we're hearing every single day. And it's best to just lay it all out on the table and talk about what's most important to you. And it ultimately ends up boiling down to lifestyle, because most of them have enough equity in their homes to make whatever change they want to make.
Right.
But do they want to make it at the price that is being presented to them at this point in time?
And I'm finding the emotional roller coaster
Oh, sure.
that
Mhm.
it causes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they weren't expecting it, right? Yeah. So we're seeing in some markets, just the last quarter, 25% increases in prices in the last quarter. We're talking about 3 months.
Mhm. Yep. I'm seeing it. It's insane to me.
Do you think that your way of doing business or your advice differs from the convention? I think that's one of the reasons why we're having you on here. I think that you look at things a little bit different.
So
Your ability to say no or find a creative solution. I oftentimes tell my clients, if you have a complicated or a challenge in real estate, I've got the guy for you.
I do like challenges. So challenges are to be borne by individuals that are prepared for the challenge.
Okay.
So if my clients generally, and I'm sure both of yours, right, they're looking for leadership. They're looking for direction, right? They kind of know in their heart and in their mind what it is they want, and they want to be guided along the right path and make sure that they didn't make a stupid mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
So having relationships with people that are experts in all the different areas, right? Whether it's engineers and contractors to help navigate, should I stay or should I go? Hey, so when I say, by the way, they shouldn't move, I don't mean to think that they just end up not doing anything. In many of those cases, they end up remodeling the homes they're in and just staying. So I'm not suggesting they do nothing, okay? What they end up doing is staying and making the best of where they are. And in many cases, that's really the best option for them. If you consider the transaction costs, just the sheer upset to the family to have to get up and move, especially if you've got kids.
Mhm.
Yeah, in many cases, if you can figure out a way to make that home what it is they really want, especially if they like the neighborhood, they just don't like the house,
Right.
you help guide them that way.
Nice. Well, Scott,
I appreciate you bringing up creativity, by the way, because that's one of the things I love about both of you. Because seriously, because I know when I refer a client to you and there's a challenge with their circumstances, you have that bulb go off and say, have you considered this? It's not just about how low the rate is. That doesn't fix every problem.
It does not.
Yeah.
It does not. You've got to have somebody that is willing to think out of the box, because there's so many challenges right now, at least on the mortgage side. We are coming more and more with issues with second homes, self-employed borrowers. You've got to have somebody that knows the right guidelines and how to make a transaction work.
Yeah, you got to move quickly too.
Yeah.
Right?
And at the end of the day, if you've got a short appraisal, we all got to come in and work that out.
Yeah.
So, it's one of the things that I've been talking to our clients about. Okay, so what if that appraisal comes in short? Are you prepared to gap the difference? Are you not? Would you be willing to have MI? What is your willingness and desire to have this property?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So, you think about what your role is as a financial advisor, right? It's always, where's the puck going, right? Where's the market now, but really, where's it going? And you help your clients adjust. In the past, I can't say that as real estate brokers and mortgage professionals, we spent a lot of time thinking about anything other than maybe the foreseeable future, like the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. But now you have to think about what's going to happen within the next 24 hours, because there's so many moving parts when you're trying to compete in this environment. You got to figure out the best way to lay this out. And what case should you put a $10,000 non-refundable due diligence fee and offer a high price? And what cases should you not?
Right. And when is it right for you and when it's not?
Yeah.
Right.
What an incredible challenge.
Yeah.
What an incredible challenge.
Yeah.
How
But
blessed,
you know
how
what?
blessed we are right
We
now
are.
to deal with that,
Unbelievable.
right?
Well,
Unbelievable.
it's both.
Yes.
I think it's both. It's not, it's complicated,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so what, one of the themes of doing a podcast like this, and one of the reasons why we had you on here is if you were to sort of look back at everything that was said, we talked about appraisers and we talked about engineers and we talked about, multitudes of process. We talked about commercial, we talked about developers. And the idea of having multiple levels of expertise, or at least of knowledge, and knowing how to bring and when to bring an expert in, because you can't silo
Exactly.
this information, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked at the process and actually been part of the process, your selling process and buying process of homes, and it's not just the transaction; it's the vision and where you want to go and who else do you need on your team, right?
Yes.
And it's putting that complexity together in a way that has a plan that allows you to say no when it's time to say no, and allows you to say yes when it's time to say yes. Maybe helps you control your emotion in a period of time that is, well, about as highly as emotional as I can remember, unless I go back to 2008 and 2009. It was a pretty emotional time there too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Fear at that point,
Right.
right, is setting in. Well, the earlier side of 2008, it was greed and over-enthusiasm.
In the later part,
Yes.
we were,
By the end
it
of
was
it,
sad.
there was lots of wound licking, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And so how do you keep yourself in a plan? Staying power.
Right.
In 2008, 2009, 2010,
Yeah.
2011.
Yes.
Many people had almost half a decade of navigating that experience. I think there's a possibility that we have the exact same thing, just in reverse.
In reverse right
In
now.
reverse.
Yeah.
So you're considering having to if you're not a homeowner and you're thinking I'd like to buy something in a couple of years,
Mhm.
it's a complicated scenario,
Yes.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I'm curious what both of you think about this. I've been sharing with my clients that one thing I'm fairly certain of. Guarantees are hard thing to talk about
In our
any
business.
in any
Mhm.
business, right? One thing I'm fairly certain of that the idea that you would need to make a bid with perhaps as many as 70 or 80 other people, 71 contracts is the offer, so is what I heard. Is very unlikely to be that way forever. I think there will be a period of time, I don't know when, but there will be a time at least
Oh, that'll come back to normalcy.
that you
Yeah,
can
a
assess
sense
a
of
property.
normalcy. If you don't have time to get a home inspection done before these things are done, you're gonna wanna make sure that the systems are operating properly, that you check to make sure that you don't have wood rot in the
Nice.
crawl space. I know a lot of brokers don't like to do it, but let me tell you, if you can't stomach that, get out of the business.
It's
Seriously.
just part of the
Yeah,
business.
it's part of the
definitely.
business now.
Because you are talking and you are advising somebody, okay, let's write a $25,000 deal.
Exactly.
And guess what? No matter what happens, that money's not coming back.
Yeah.
That's a lot,
If
you
the
know?
offer is accepted, right?
Yeah, if
Right,
your
right,
offer is
right,
accepted.
right.
Well, the only way you probably will get it accepted, and I'm not to cross
Is-
lines,
is
but
if it's a
probably
big
something.
number.
I mean,
Exactly.
I notice when I'm, more and more contracts come across my desk. I mean, the D is becoming more and more. I mean, I'm seeing $75,000,
Oh, yeah.
$100,000. That money's gone.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you want to have someone on your side that's going to do the things that you are saying because you got to act quickly.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't position your client to walk away from a certain amount of money, right, without knowing, going into it, that there's a risk, right? You're not advising your clients properly, right? And to me, without knowing whether or not, there's a serious water damage
Mhm.
issue, and you can't be sure, right? You can't be, especially if it's been recently remodeled.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones I'm especially concerned about. I'm actually less concerned about the ones that I can see everything
Right.
than the ones that have been recently modeled, unless they had a GC behind them.
Yeah, some lipstick on a pig. going
That's
on.
what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Lipstick on a pig.
I listened recently to a conversation. this is what we're talking about here, why ethics matter and directing your client in the right way matters. But I was privy to a conversation about if your house had major issues, if you had a major leak or foundational issues, or one of those really big monsters that sort of ties you up when you're ready to get out of the house. Now's the time to dump that baggage on someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of made me a little sick in my stomach.
Yeah.
But I think that's something to really concern yourself a little bit with. And I know that probably, if there's listeners out there who are tuned in because they're interested in buying in the market, that one might cause a bit of a gulp.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is there's a case, and without getting into a lot of details about it, where a broker was held responsible, and the seller also was held responsible for having knowledge, but failing to disclose. But you need to assume, for your own protection, that the people that you're doing business with may not have, right? So you have to, you got to protect yourself. No question.
Yeah, I'm sure that helps with some of the relationships you have in this market. You see who the selling agent is.
Yes.
And that might matter to you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. You know, the brokers out there that ask all the right questions, they dig around a little deeper, they ask their clients to get home inspections before they go on the market. And if they refuse, they know, the red flags start going off. Yes. And it's not unusual, even when representing another client, where they'll say, you might want to take a look at that crawl space before you get your offer submitted.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the other reasons why expertise and experience matter so much, right? You're an expert in this field. We want you to be here for lots of reasons, but you garner a reputation and have the volume you have and the clients you have because you continually have done it the right way.
One time's not worth it.
Sure not.
Yeah.
In many, many transactions, one reputation.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Yeah. I always say to my clients, I'm going to do anything for you except wear orange. So, not doing that for you. So, anyway.
Well said. Well said. And there's clients that will ask you to do it. Oh, yeah.
They'll ask you to do a lot of things, but
Oh, yeah.
you know what? My licenses are important to me, and I like to get up and look at me. I like me, and I want to continue to be able to look at me.
100%.
Right? You know, money's not everything. It is not everything.
I think that's with anything. You
Yeah.
want to go get I don't know, if you were to get a complicated surgery, right? You want it to be someone's first time they did it,
Nope.
or 5,000th time they did it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, you want people to be truthful about their actions too. Look, we make mistakes, right? So if you're looking at a circumstance or you're having a discussion and you say something based on what you thought was true, and then you go back and say, "Oh my gosh, I thought that was on city sewer and water. It's on well and septic." You know, I refer to it as a pop off, right? You said it, and because you were confident it was true, correct it. Contact your client, let them know that you made a mistake. You know, don't let it sit and have them think later whether or not they should have been looking at that property after all, because it really was on city sewer.
Right.
You know, people are afraid to admit that they made a mistake for the simplest things.
Right.
And I can't go sleep at night worrying about whether or not I said something that was wrong.
You have to own what you do, no matter what it is and what aspect of life, right? If you make a mistake, you own it, and you're right. You pick the phone up and go, okay, you know, I was wrong about that. They will feel so much better and will love you forever because you just own. Very few people, I think, expect you to be perfect, no matter in what field you're in. Are there certain people that expect you to? Yeah, they're
Ourselves, right?
Yeah, but if you do the right thing, I think it always benefits you and behooves you in the long run.
We not too long ago had a conversation about mistakes.
Yeah.
Are they mistakes or are they lessons, right?
Right, and sometimes they're both.
I think that's how we learn is through mistakes.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%. Although there are no mistakes. only lessons, right?
There you go.
You could probably share that by heart at this point.
I still need to refer to my notes.
I love it.
Well, Scott, thank you
No,
for
thank you for the
joining our
invitation.
podcast
We'll look
today.
forward to hearing more about your future guests and your continued success.
We appreciate you coming out and supporting us.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back as this market evolves, and we'll look for feedback from our listeners as to what they liked and what they'd like to hear more of. And once we get those comments together,
Yeah.
we'll come back maybe a little more focused on one subject or the other.
Sounds perfect.
Thank you very, very
Oh,
much
it's
for
my
what you
pleasure.
do for our community.
Thank you.
What a leader you've been in this Cary market. Thank you for your
Yes.
friendship and your loyalty over all these years.
Yes,
We're-
your
we're-
friendship.
We're real lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Yes, we are blessed.
Yeah,
And David,
same.
I'm blessed because I get to be partners with you in this podcast,
We
and
get it.
it's a joy. And thank you
All
for
right,
doing
bye-bye.
what we do. All right, guys, we will catch you on the next podcast. Thank you again for listening to us, and we will look forward to having more conversations with you.
Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of each new episode. The Conquer podcast is hosted by the Sherry Riano team at First Heritage Mortgage. Visit us at thesherryrianoteam.com for more information about our team. First Heritage Mortgage is an equal housing lender. Need our formal NMLS ID numbers? Sherry's NMLS ID number is 71774. First Heritage's company NMLS ID number is 86548. And the Cary branch NMLS ID number is 1872098. Learn more at fhmtg.com.